There are reports from the White House today that President Trump has reached out to President Putin on the subject of nuclear arms agreement between the United States, Russia, and China. Of course, we really don't know what they discussed, but that is what the president's staff is putting out. If it's true, and we take them at their word, which we should, it would be kind of strange considering that the U.S. and Russia already had a nuclear treaty in place, negotiated by Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev, that we, our country, chose to just no longer honor. Just a few months ago, that decision was made. So it's curious, right? Speaking of Mr. Gorbachev, he has just penned an editorial in the Wall Street Journal where he's urging both sides to stop the, quote, madness of nuclear deterrence. He writes that the idea that more weapons make us more safe is just mad, right? And he goes after those who have been pushing for it, including, historically speaking, Margaret Thatcher. Joining us now is Pulitzer Prize-winning author Chris Hedges to talk about this article by Mikhail Gorbachev. It's called "The Madness of Nuclear Deterrence." Do you get his point on this?
Yes, because we've eviscerated the State Department. We no longer engage in diplomacy. Detente, which has made the world a safer place. And remember, the people who were most successful at detente with the old Soviet Union were Republicans, Eisenhower, Nixon, and Reagan. It's now the very word detente, which, let's be clear, Trump is you can't trust anything that comes out of his mouth. But as soon as he utters it, the national security state goes berserk. But the breakdown of nuclear treaties, the pushing of NATO forces up to the border with Russia, what is going on here? And Gorbachev is exactly right. This inability on the part of the world's two largest nuclear powers to speak and negotiate rationally is very, very dangerous.
But there's this thinking out there that's been going on for a long time. He talks about Margaret Thatcher being a disciple of this. Most of us grew up with the Cuban Missile Crisis. We've always been told, as long as we have big nukes, and the bigger our nukes, the bigger their nukes, that's fine, because then no one will use them. So it's the fact that our weapons are large that keeps us from ever having to engage in a war. That's kind of the thinking guys like you and I grew up with. And that's what some of those leaders you just mentioned also kind of believed in. Is that true?
Well, no, of course. I mean, it was reducing the nuclear stockpiles and monitoring those stockpiles that made the world a safer place, getting re-engaged, which we've now done, in a nuclear weapons race. And remember, the Russians have now put up anti-ballistic systems that they say cannot be detected because, of course, we've moved under NATO missiles up to Russia's border. This is extremely dangerous. You have various flashpoints, Syria being one, where this conflict could go wrong really quickly. And so you want communication, you want discussion. You don't have détente. Nobody has to, love Vladimir Putin or love Russia or anything else. But what's kept the world from committing acts of massive self-annihilation has been forms of communication, which figures like Mike Pompeo and John Bolton have no interest in doing, as we're seeing in Venezuela. I think they're probably incapable of speaking to anyone but themselves.
And the irony of this is you and I are having this conversation on this newscast on this day about the fact that people like Pompeo and, Trump himself and others around him, including John Bolton, are literally threatening Russia while they're doing newscasts on other networks about how Trump and Russia are apparently having a relationship of some sort. It doesn't make any sense, Chris.
No, it doesn't, unless you are part of the massive arms industry that is making billions of dollars by refitting former East Bloc countries to NATO equipment, or you're the Democratic Party that doesn't want to accept responsibility for the social inequality that gave rise to Trump.
Chris Hedges, as usual, we thank you, sir, for your wisdom, and we hope to talk to you again very soon.
Thanks, Rick.
I'm Rick Sanchez. You found us on YouTube, and that's awesome. But you know what? I'm also live every night at 7 and 8 p.m. Eastern on DirecTV and Dish and cable and satellite, the RT app, and Pluto TV. I'll see you there.